3BC.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Joy, the cultural liturgist for this cultural conversation, and your host with Mostest too, that part. I am welcoming my girls back, the 3BCs, Chloe, KC the Alchemist, and One Solo. And we have a guest today, Victoria Traylor, who is a therapist. So that gives you a clue as to what we're talking about, mental health today. She's a therapist, and she's going to provide us with the view from the expert's lens, not just our strong opinions on the matters. But we have a lot of things with mental health is such a broad category. We have a lot of things we want to cover under that banner, talking about, self-care and Black Superwoman, Help and Shame. And it's also, most importantly, Minority Mental Health Month is the month of July. So we definitely want to stake our claim in that conversation. Welcome, ladies. Welcome, Victoria. Not that Victoria is not a lady. Welcome, ladies and expert. And she's also an authoress. That's how we met. She wrote a book, speaking of mental health too, Outlets, Resurrected by the River. Writing is an outlet she wrote her way through. So welcome. Hey,
thank you ladies for having me.
You are
glad to have you.
Welcome
for joining us.
So who wants to start? There's plenty to unpack. Who wants to start? Do we want to start by? Well, I'll open it up and say this. The most important thing that we have to know, especially as women, is that self-care ain't selfish. So and that's hashtagable. Hashtag self-care ain't selfish. Say it to yourself 1,000,000 times till you believe it. Now, we have a lot of conflicting emotions about that as women, particularly as moms. Victoria, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I'm actually in the process of reading a book called Shifting, The Double Lives of Black Women in America. Mm-hmm. And it's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, I suggest you check it out. And
we'll post it.
Yes. And just in discussions that I've been having about the book, and often even with my clients that I see on a daily basis, which is primarily Black women, it comes up that no one is going to give you permission to take time to take care of you. And so many times we are waiting for our partners, our children, our jobs, our friends, family even, to say, oh, I'm not going to bother you today. Take care of you. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen. And we have to stop waiting for permission and give ourselves permission to take that time to take care of us. I tell my clients all the time, you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you are on E, you are not going to have anything to give to your children, to give to your spouse, your partner, or to anybody else. And so you have to prioritize filling your tank.
Yes. And we say that a lot here. We talk about that, particularly when we talk about Black women and the way in which we give, but the way in which we empty ourselves for people. And we talk about that a lot. We fill in the cup, and no one's coming. So no one's coming. And we say that a lot. Ain't nobody coming. You just got to come for yourself.
Absolutely.
That is what it is. Ladies, you have questions or concerns?
How did you, what pushed you into becoming a therapist?
So really that was not the goal at all. I actually I was FBI bound. That was the dream. Mm-hmm. And I actually started working, while I was working on my master's, I started working with kids and at Job Corps. And in this particular program, we weren't really dealing with mental health issues, but a lot of them had mental health issues. And so I was like, okay, I think I want to shift my focus. And I did. And I've been in mental health ever since. And that's been about 15 years now.
Oh. What do you find, Victoria, is the greatest obstacle to just getting people to prioritize their own mental health, right? Like clearly all of us have to do the work often of I almost say I'm trying to survive I survived my childhood. Now I'm like trying to get myself on path for my adulthood.
Absolutely.
How do we get people there and comfortable enough to lean in?
So me, I definitely don't consider myself a traditional therapist. And anybody, all my clients, I have a saying. I said, this drink right here ain't for everybody. And they always laugh at me. But then once they get to know me, they understand what that means. And so I really try to think outside of the box and meet people where they are, creating a safe place where they know we do so much shifting as Black women every day. This is not a place where you have to shift. This is a place where you can be authentically who you are. And so a lot of times the biggest obstacle that I run into with people, especially Black women, is the stigma attached to mental health. If I'm going to see a therapist, that means there's something wrong with me. That means that I'm crazy. And they don't want the label. Or we have the super religious people that are saying, you know, you just pray about it. You pray about it and you're going to get through it. Right. And I do have clients that are very religious. And what I explain to them is you can pray about it, but you also need to follow that up with some action. And you going to see a therapist seeking some help is an action step, right? And so, but yeah, those are some of the biggest obstacles, just the stigma, the overall stigma that is attached to mental health services. And one of the things I tell my clients is that I go see a therapist 2 times a month, every other week. I don't miss a session. Every good therapist should be in therapy because we have our own work to do. We carry so much from our clients.
Yes, you do.
And so I wouldn't see a therapist that wasn't actively in therapy.
That is very true. And you're right. And you know, one of the things we that I know I personally like to talk about is pray and. You know, I'm a big pray and person. Pray and go to therapy. Pray and some of y'all need to be on meds. So pray and get your meds. Pray and meditate. Pray and exercise. Pray and eat right. Pray and take time for yourself. Pray and, you know, because prayer works. But as one solo pointed out, faith without works is dead.
Yes.
And God, whatever you believe, God, the universal, whatever, it'll meet you halfway. He, she, they, we respect all pronouns here on 3BC. He, she, or they will meet you halfway.
Yes.
So, you know, thank God for a halfway God. He'll meet you halfway. All you got to do is reach out. He, she, or they will meet you halfway. And all you got to do is reach out.
How do you not take that home every day?
I'm a little different. So I definitely have created some rituals for myself that I do every day. And now that I'm doing my work from home, I still do my rituals. So I'm going to decompress. I'm going to take a few minutes, journal about my day, just anything that's heavy that I need to sit down. I definitely am a sage girl. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to sage my work area, my home. I'm going to light some incense. And I also meditate. And those are the things that really, really get me through. Every now and again, you know, I'm going to have me a little drink.
Right. Hey,
you know, much needed. But yeah, definitely just creating a space to leave whatever I need to leave there. And, you know, if I'm honest, there are some days, depending, I specialize in trauma. And so there are some days where I can't just leave it there. And I'm heavy all day into the night, you know, and I get up and I continue to put my own coping skills and practices into place, because I tell my clients all the time, I can give you all the tools and skills in the world, but if you have to practice them, right? We can't just talk about it. You got to do it. And so then I will practice them, you know, and on the tough days, I have to practice them a little more than I would on a lighter day. But I'm not always, to answer your question, I am not always able to just leave it at the door.
Never trust anybody that doesn't have a vice, because they not right. They either lying or they ain't right. So the drinking is 100. Sometimes you need a little drinky drink. That's 100.
Amen.
Never trust a therapist, a preacher, or anybody else who does not have a vice. They lying.
Or doesn't openly admit they have one.
Yeah, they either lying or fake.
Right.
Unreal. Go ahead, Chloe.
You mentioned something earlier about that you should seek a counselor. If you go see a therapist, that you should make sure your therapist also sees a therapist as well, which I totally agree. But what other types of things should a person going to seek a therapist look for? Or what kind of advice would you give them?
That's a great question. One of the things that I think is important, I know even myself included, I've had early on experiences with therapists where this person couldn't relate to me in any way, shape, or form, or said something that was highly offensive, and it just wasn't a good fit. And so a lot of people will go and it's not a good fit, and then they say, I'm not going back to therapy.
Right.
And so it's just like if you're looking for a foundation, if you're looking for a color, you might go through more than one foundation to find, the perfect fit for you. And
especially if you're Black.
Yes, ma'am.
And it works on both the therapy side and the foundation.
On foundation, right.
Yes. We want a good matchup. And so if you go to somebody and it's not a good fit, don't stop there. Shop around just like you would a car or anything else. Shop around. Things that I look for when finding my therapist, I'll speak to my own experience, is somebody that creates a space where I don't feel judged, because it's already very anxiety provoking for somebody to come in and lay all of their stuff, their dirty laundry, things they don't want to talk about on the table. And if you create an environment where, you're beating them over the head, they don't feel comfortable, and then therefore they're not going to come back. Mm-hmm. So definitely looking for a therapist that has a non-judgmental space. Even rules. Sometimes therapists have rules. Well, here are the rules of engagement for therapy with me. Ask them what they are. What kind of therapist are you? What kind of practices do you tend to use? What interventions are you using with your clients? Have they been successful? I always try to be as transparent as possible with my clients. They always want to know, well, what's your story? And so I open up with, let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm from Akron, Ohio, and this is this, and that is that. I try to be really open to let them know this is a two-way street. I learned so much from my clients. It's not just them learning from me. And so let's embark on this journey together. And so having that person that you really feel is in your corner when we're talking about issues, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do about it? Because I want them to know I'm in this with you.
How do we move people past the shame and get them in a place where they can, one, ask for help, but two, feel comfortable with getting help once they ask for it and once they get it? How do we move people past the shame? I know that may not be a short answer or may not even have an answer, but what are some things that maybe we can do?
Right. And also add to that, Joy, is like the other thing is like that it's white people. Like therapy is for white people. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, Black folks bad about, that's white people stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. So a couple things. And I tell people this all the time. I always have a client that wants to refer a friend, and then I'm like, yeah, give them my information. They don't call. And there's like, have they called? No, they have to be ready. A person has to be ready. Right. And a lot of times you have to get to a space where I don't have anywhere else to turn. I don't have anywhere else to go. So what's the harm in trying this, right? It's almost like getting to a place of desperation. And I wish that we didn't have to get there in order to want to, rise up and try something different. But for a lot of people, you do. It's almost like you got to hit rock bottom before you decide, okay, I didn't try everything else. Let me try this thing that's kind of taboo, at least in the African-American community. And once I get my clients, once they make it through the door, it's kind of like if you practice yoga, once you get to the mat, that's the hardest part, is just getting there, right?
Yeah.
And so once I get them in front of me, that's when I try to ease their mind, so to speak. I always give them this same quote. Every client that has ever seen me has heard me say this. In the past is shame and guilt. In the future is anxiety and worry. Only in this present moment can we have true peace.
We'll
and
post
I start
too.
with
That's
that.
Postable too.
Yeah, I always start with that because I want them to know, I get it. Nobody is coming in and sitting down in front of a stranger and has no shame. We all have shame, right? We all have done things, said things have happened to us. And there's a certain amount of shame that is attached to that. So I already know you're walking in with shame following right behind you. Maybe some guilt, maybe some anger, I get that. And so I want them to know coming in the door, hey, I get it, but we're going to work through it together.
What are some, and now I don't want you to work for free because I believe in a Black woman getting paid. What are some tips that you can give people, to take care of themselves?
Yes. So I'm big on writing. Joy mentioned it earlier. I wrote a book, and that was one of the lowest points in my life when I was writing that book, and I was in a really bad situation, and I used writing as my medium.
Resurrected by the River, available on all platforms. Carry on.
Thank you. And
in your local bookstores. Let's not forget that.
Yes. And so with that being said, I always encourage my clients to write daily. And of course, they're like, oh, I don't want to write. And I'm like, look, I'm not asking you to write an essay. I'm asking you to jot down what you're feeling this day and at this time. Mm-hmm. Why? Because if I ask you, so tell me how you been since the last time I saw you? I don't know. I guess I've been all right. But if you journaled about it each day, you can go back and reflect on where you were. You know what I'm saying? If you're dealing with depression, you're like, well, I just been depressed. Well, what was going on? What triggered? You don't know. I can't tell you what I had on yesterday, let alone what I was thinking about last Thursday. And that's why I encourage writing, and for the clients that don't want to write, I don't care. Open your phone. I have some clients that speak into voice notes and they'll play it for me. These were my thoughts at the end of my day. It's like, I don't care how you do it. I just need you to be able to tell me definitively what's been going on with you since the last time I saw you. So writing and reflecting is always a tool that I encourage my clients to do. Sitting in stillness is a big one. All of us are moving. We got jobs. We got things to do. We got kids. We don't take time to sit in stillness. And it's so important. And so I always ask clients, commit. Let's start with 5 minutes. Even if you're sitting in your car back before Corona when we were all going to work. Sit in your car for 5 minutes before you walk in with your family, just so you can have time for you. You can have time to calm your mind, gather your thoughts, create that. And most people, I don't have 20 minutes. Okay, I'm not asking for 20. Give me 5. Set a timer and sit in stillness. Try not to move, try not to blink. Do this. Sit in stillness.
I was going to ask you about barriers to meditation too. That was one of the questions I had. Like, sometimes it's hard to be still and push past the meditation. I mean, or get into meditation.
Yes.
But I guess it's just really, even sitting in your car is helpful for that, just taking the time. But the bigger question I wanted to ask you before we wrap is what are your thoughts? Let me preface this by saying I kind of poo-poo Christian therapy. I really firmly believe in real life, real time action strategies and the separation of church and state when it comes to mental health and health in general. What are your thoughts on Christian therapy? Because I had a friend with a Christian therapist, and it just, which we talked about offline. And it was just, I was like, I don't know what's happening here.
So I am in agreement with you. I think that there should definitely be a separation of the two. And here is why. Sometimes, and this is no pun to Christianity or to church and religion, but sometimes the people that are doing the therapy are not qualified clinicians.
Yes.
Just speaking from a biblical standpoint. And the issue that we're talking about is a real life now issue. For example, if you're saying if a husband and wife are coming and they're having marital issues and the word is, well, wives should submit themselves unto their husbands. And then that's telling this woman, okay, now you need to figure out a way to submit to your husband. And she's like, but wait, I'm telling you that I'm being emotionally abused. I'm being verbally abused. This isn't a safe situation. But your answer is submit. And it's like, well, wait, that's not where that scripture ended. It's for a husband that has first submitted himself to God, right? We need to look at the whole thing, not just pieces of it. And I think for me, that's my issue with Christian counselors sometimes, not all, but a lot that clients have do and that I have experienced myself is that you are talking about something and it's almost like you're trying to convince somebody to align with what the Bible is saying, but you're not listening to what the real issue is. And so then you have these people that are stuck and it's like, well, I tried counseling and it didn't work. And now they further have a bad taste in their mouth about counseling. When in reality, you need to see a professional who is trained, who understands how to listen, who is going to give you advice, not advice, I'm sorry, because we shouldn't be giving advice, but who is going to listen to you and hear what you're saying and give that back to you and say, okay, this is what you have stated. Let's look at this. Let's look at this, right? We're not talking about what the Bible say. That's great. We're talking about you. We're talking about how you feel, how this situation is impacting on a day-to-day basis. Indeed. And so, I think that even couples that have come to me that have been through premarital counseling at their church, they have a lot of issues. And I'm like, well, did y'all talk about communication? Did y'all talk about respecting each other's viewpoint? Did you talk about a shared vision for your relationship? And they're like, what? Huh? And I'm like, well, what did you talk about? Well, we looked at scriptures.
The Lord.
And we talked about celibacy and not having sex before marriage. And all that's great if that's what you believe. But it's so much more to a marriage than sex before marriage and submission and Bible scriptures. There's so much more. And so you need some real life, relatable type interventions and skills so that when you and your mate get into a conflict, y'all can resolve it in a way that's not unhealthy.
Right. Thank you for that answer, because I think so many people really need to hear that. Again, pray and. Yes. Pray and. You know what I mean? So we have to wrap here, but everybody, this is African American Mental Health Month. I probably botched that a little bit, but it's Mental Health Month for Black folks in July. And it's really imperative that we take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. Because if we are broken down, then everything else around, we can't hold up anybody else. The book, Resurrected by the River by Victoria Traylor, is available at your local bookstores and on all platforms. So check it out. She literally wrote her way through a trying situation, and perhaps some of you can too.
I'm just grateful that we're having a conversation about it early and often. Every day. Absolutely. I'm looking at my sister friends who are struggling, who are holding on by a single thread, trying not to fall apart. And so it's just really important that we have honest conversations about the need to do it. And most of them, they love Jesus for real, with their whole heart. But that don't change the fact that they're falling apart.
Right.
Yes.
And this is what you need to do to keep from falling apart. So things. So thank you for sharing all of this with us.
No problem. And just Joy, one last thing I just wanted to say that moving forward, just a practice is we all should strive to find a soft place to land. I heard that recently and I was like, wow, having a long day, having the stressors of life, we need to look for that soft place to land. So make that, a goal for each day. Like after it's all said and done, where's my soft place to land? You got to create it. Nobody's going to create it for you.
Nobody's coming. That's what I keep saying as well. Victoria, if you're in the Memphis area, Victoria is taking new clients. Do yourself a favor and check her out. Victoria, do you want to give your website?
I will. Enjoy. I'm not just in the Memphis area. Since we are doing virtual, I have clients all across the United States now. So wherever you are, if you got a computer and some Wi-Fi and you are interested, feel free to reach out. My website is www.choosecreatelive.com. I'm also on Psychology Today, Victoria Traylor. I would love to hear from you. Even if you just have questions, even if you don't want to see me as your therapist, I would be happy to look up some resources and point you in the right direction, because it truly is my life's purpose to help connect people with the resources that they need to get the help that they need.
Thank you, Victoria. All right. This has been another episode of 3BC. Everybody, take care, fill your cup, and be well. We'll see you next time.
3BC, recorded at Kudzukian Studios, directed, produced, and distributed by Kudzukian.
Join the conversation at facebook.com/3BC.